It seems nearly hard to imagine now that it all began so simply and so flawlessly. The sunshine in my life had always been my wife, Lana, whom I believed to be my everlasting partner. However, it was before everything fell apart, and I discovered that even those closest to me might betray me in the most heinous ways. This isn't just a narrative about a cheating wife, rather. It's a story of total betrayal from everyone I thought I could trust, including my family and best friend. Allow me to transport you back to my initial encounter with Lana. My best friend Sean pulled me out of my comfort zone 7 years ago at a party hosted by a mutual acquaintance. Don't get me wrong, I adore Sean, who has supported me through everything and has remained by my side even when I was at my lowest. I wasn't sure I wanted to be at that party, though, when he pulled me along. Social contexts? For me, they're a nightmare. Small talk? Even worse than death. But there I was, clumsily standing at the snack table, observing the fun that everyone else was having, and counting down the minutes until I could get away and resume my games and tech tasks. That was my universe, my secure haven. Then Lana entered, though. Then everything was different. Lana was more than just gorgeous. She had a magnetic personality. Her enthusiasm lit up the room like a spark. She captivated everyone with her flamboyant movements, loud stories, and laughter. People hung on her every word, leaning in to listen. And me? I felt totally out of place, like a shadow that blended into the walls. I was shocked when she noticed me, though. She approached me directly, took a handful of chips, and smirked as she remarked, "You seem to be attempting to blend in with that wall." I laughed, feeling a little ashamed, but she wasn't finished. "Is it really that clear?" With a contrite tone, I asked. Painfully, she taunted, popping a chip into her lips. I forgot to be uncomfortable throughout the subsequent talk, because it was so effortless and organic. I didn't feel alienated for once. For the remainder of the night, we talked, and when it was time to go, we exchanged phone numbers. That was the beginning. At the time, I believed that this was it. This marked the start of a tale we would hear for the rest of our lives. We moved in together a year later. It was absolutely natural. She was loved by both of my parents from the beginning, and my mother was often telling me how fortunate I was to have met someone like her. In fact, even my normally silent dad began striking up a discussion with her. No one else ever experienced that. What about my pals? Yes, they also adored her. She undoubtedly clicked with my best friend Sean more than everyone else. My girlfriend and my best friend were getting along like old friends, which I thought was fantastic. What might go wrong? However, things weren't as ideal as I had assumed. Sean and Lana were too close. It appeared harmless at first. They would tease me, make fun of my eccentricities, and crack jokes. It was all in good humor, so I didn't feel left out. But gradually, things began to shift. As their friendship grew, I was unsure of how to respond. After 3 years, I asked Lana to marry me. I firmly believed that I was making the greatest choice of my life. The first person I told after purchasing the ring was Sean. He smiled and drew me into an embrace, saying, "It's about time, man." He even helped me choose the ring, and when I handed it to Lana, she stated it was precisely what she would have picked out. "You two are beautiful together." I was pleased. It was this. Everything was coming together. However, Lana began to feel dissatisfied with her work. She was employed in a boutique, but eventually she would return home angry and complain about challenging clients or unsatisfactory shifts. She made the decision that enough was enough one day. One evening, she stated with a tone of finality, "I want to figure out what I'm passionate about." She quit abruptly after that. Without hesitation, I backed her. I told her to stop. "We'll work it out." And we did. She experimented with several projects throughout the course of the following year in an attempt to determine her career goals. I put in extra hours to keep things going in the interim. Although Sean and I didn't spend as much time together, it seemed as though nothing had changed. Things started to feel strange one day. Sean began to visit when I wasn't home. It was just sporadic at first, random afternoons, when he would stop by, say hello, and sometimes pick up something he had left behind. Not a huge deal. However, it increased in frequency over time. 4 times a week became 5, then 3. He would hang out with Lana while I wasn't there, helping her with things I hadn't even consented to, so it wasn't random anymore. I didn't want to draw hasty conclusions, but I was beginning to feel uneasy. He was my best friend, after all. However, all was destroyed when I arrived home early from work one day. They were there when I entered the kitchen. Lana was leaning on the counter, watching Sean as he worked on something on the cabinet with a screwdriver. At first, they didn't even hear me. I put my luggage down with a bit more force than was required and exclaimed, "Wow, Sean. It appears that you work as a handyman as a side gig." Lana chuckled nervously. Sean said, "I didn't think you'd mind." Proposed? I raised an eyebrow and repeated, "When did my best friend start offering to help my wife out around the house without notifying me?" Sean stood up straight and used a rag to wipe his hands. "Hey man, while you're out there killing it at work, I'm just trying to keep the place intact." I tried to laugh, but I felt terrible on the inside. The numbers didn't add up. The texts began at that point. Lana was giggling at things I wasn't involved in and spending more time on her phone. She consistently said it was simply the girls' group chat when I questioned her about it, and I took her word for it. Why wouldn't I? However, her phone buzzed on the counter one evening when she was taking a shower. I was merely attempting to move it to prevent it from falling. I wasn't spying. Then I noticed it. Sean's name. "You're hilarious, haha. I'll remember the date." At first, I didn't give it much thought. However, something didn't feel right. On what date? What was the reason behind Sean's messaging Lana? I made the decision to question him about it the following day. However, he behaved oddly more than normal when I did. I dismissed it, but I couldn't get it out of my head. Was I thinking too much? Or should I have been suspicious? The more I listened, the more I understood that something was off. I was too blind to notice what was going on right in front of me. However, I wouldn't remain blind for very long. The tingling in the pit of my stomach persisted, even though I wasn't the type of person who enjoyed overanalyzing situations. The small things, the little moments that kept adding up, were what told me something was wrong. Not just the texts, or Sean's continual presence in our house when I wasn't there. I tried to ignore it all for a while. I was merely paranoid, I assured myself. Sean was my best friend, after all, and I had spent years creating a life with Lana, who was my wife. However, the more I observed them, the more I understood that I wasn't merely being suspicious. Something was there, deeper activity. I simply couldn't identify it. Then came the day I made the decision to give it a try. I needed to know if my intuition was correct. I could cope with the possibility that I was dreaming. If something was going on, though, I had to confront it. We hadn't had a game night in ages, and it was a Saturday night. We used to enjoy spending time together as a family. Sean, Lana, and I. I needed to find out if it was just me, or if they were concealing something, because I felt like something wasn't right between them. "Hey," I said nonchalantly to Lana. "It's been a while since we had a game night. What are your thoughts?" As in the past, we could invite Sean over and perhaps prepare some nachos. Lana didn't immediately look up from her phone. For a brief bit longer than normal, she hesitated, her fingers stuck on the screen. She spoke almost too hastily when she said, "I think Sean is busy this weekend." "Oh, really?" I narrowed my eyes and asked, "Did he say that to you?" Lana paused for a second. She looked at me and answered, "No, I just assumed. Hasn't he been working a lot lately?" I didn't believe it. There was a sensation, practiced. She seemed to have anticipated my inquiry regarding Sean. I refused to let it go. I took out my phone and said, "Well, I'll just ask him. It will be beneficial to catch up if he is available." Lana remained silent. She actually didn't appear excited about the prospect, but that didn't stop me. I sensed tension rising in the room when I contacted Sean. It was evident in Lana's face. She wasn't acting as sloppily as she typically does when we were all together. Sean, too? It was odd that he wasn't answering the phone immediately. "Hey, how are you?" After a few rings, Sean finally answered, his tone almost too nonchalant. "What's happening this weekend, dude? We ought to get together for a gaming night and reconnect like old friends. Are you down?" There was a moment's silence. "Yes, dude. Let's get started. I don't have anything going on." My stomach twisted. "Nothing is happening." "Really?" Lana had just stated yesterday that he was too busy. and I began to question how much I actually knew about their relationship. When the game night finally arrived, it seemed incorrect from the beginning. Lana was more reserved than normal. She was usually vivacious, joking around, and sustaining the discussion. Not tonight, though. She remained quiet tonight, hardly speaking at all. Sean, too. He seemed to have lost his typical charm in favor of an awkward, even aloof, energy. He always averted his gaze from Lana, as if he were attempting to conceal something. I couldn't get rid of the impression that they were disclosing a secret that only they knew. It was meant to be enjoyable, an opportunity to socialize. However, the entire evening had the feel of a show, and the only person who wasn't aware of it was me. By the middle of the night, I was at my breaking point. I have to be aware. I had to face them. Hey, Sean, I began, attempting to seem casual. How has work been going for you lately? I take it you've been murdering it? Lana interrupted before Sean could respond. She answered almost too quickly. Oh, yeah, he's been so busy lately, working on this new project. Sean's demeanor changed as he glanced at her, and I could sense that something wasn't right. It seemed as though he was attempting to silence her. Sean squirmed in his seat as his smile wavered. Yeah, it's been a lot, he said in a flat tone that was different from his typical relaxed one. I didn't overlook it. I had to find out the truth about this. What's going on with you two? You two seem pretty close these days, I added, trying not to indicate my mounting displeasure by speaking steadily. Lana shrugged, as if it didn't matter. With an artificial laugh, she remarked, You're imagining things. Your best friend is Sean. What's wrong? However, her face did not reflect her words. She averted her gaze from me, and I noticed a tiny movement of her lips, as if she were attempting to suppress a smile. However, why? Why did she find this so simple? For the time being, I ignored it, but my thoughts were racing. The parts weren't coming together, and I sensed that the truth was getting closer yet still eluded. After Sean left later that evening, Lana and I sat on the couch and tried to piece everything together. I saw her smiling at things she wouldn't tell me while her eyes were once again fixed on her phone. I was mistaken. The temptation was too strong for me to resist going through her phone. I was unable to let it go. I waited for the perfect opportunity, and I took her phone off the counter as soon as she entered the shower. Unlocking it was simple. She probably assumed I wouldn't look, so she used the same passwords for everything. I felt alienated in my own house as I read through her messages. There were many harmless texts, nothing caught me off guard. Then I noticed them, though. She and Sean exchanged SMS. A few of them appeared harmless enough, but one in particular chilled me to the bone. I'm excited for later. Same location, same time. Same location, same time. What was meant by that? What I was seeing was unbelievable. I wasn't yet prepared to face her. Not until I had more information. So I dug deeper. Despite not having a gym membership, Lana had a regular appointment for a gym night in her calendar, which was always at the same time and night. I initially believed I was seeing hallucinations, but as I learned more, I became increasingly aware that something wasn't quite right. My doubts started to fester and develop inside of me like a cancer, until I was unable to deny them any longer. That's when I discovered the motel. On a road trip years ago, Sean and I had slept at this hotel. I will always remember that location. Then it struck me, and the memories came flooding back. Lana's Google search history included the same hotel from the night she had gone out. At last, everything was starting to fit together. Everything fell into place. The night I noticed the hotel in Lana's search history, although I couldn't dispute it, I also couldn't believe it. It felt like the universe had slapped me in the face with the reality after weeks of my gut screaming at me. That hotel was where they had been meeting, Lana and Sean. They also believed that they could get away with it. I had to face them. I was unable to tolerate it any longer. I had to be told the truth. I didn't give a damn about how painful or horrible it would be. I had to confront it directly. I came up with my plan the following day. The hotel reservation was mine. I was aware of their meeting place. All I needed to do now was discover the extent of this. My heart was racing in my chest when I pulled into that hotel's parking lot. I knew it wasn't this, but I wasn't sure what I was expecting to see. It seemed as though everything had frozen, as I saw Lana and Sean leaving the foyer together. arm in arm. I was hoping that this was simply a silly misunderstanding. They appeared to have been doing this for years because they were so relaxed and at peace with one another, as if they were completely carefree, as if they hadn't just ruined my life. My legs felt like they could buckle under me as I got out of the car. My voice was tight with rage as I yelled out to them, "Lana!" They went cold. Lana had a shocked expression on her face, as if she had been caught in the middle of a crime and realized there was no way out. In contrast, Sean appeared to be a deer caught in headlights. His body was stiff, his eyes wide. I could feel the heat rising in my body. I was at a loss for words. I wanted to strike something, shout, and let them know how hurt they had made me feel. However, I was immobile. My chest felt like it was about to burst, and my hands were trembling. Lana spoke first, her voice wavering as she tried to sound composed and defend everything. "This isn't what it looks like, Jerry. Don't. Don't even attempt." With a voice as harsh as a razor, I interrupted her. "I'd rather not hear it." Sean moved forward, attempting to be the good person and make things run more smoothly. "Look, dude, let's just discuss this." "Discuss what?" I pondered. "Do you want to discuss how you've been ambushing me? I wonder how long this has been going on. Ever since the cabinets? Or did it happen earlier?" Neither of them responded. As if unable to look at me, Sean simply stood there staring at the floor. Lana bit her lip as she stood there, a mixture of frustration and shame on her face. The quiet was overwhelming. More than anything they could have said, it stung. Although I wanted to cry, I chose to turn around and leave. I was unable to remain there. The sight of them together, acting as if nothing was amiss, was too much for me to bear. I was out of breath as I got into my car. The betrayal, the lies, the years of friendship and love disintegrating into nothing. I could feel the weight of it all. My mind was spinning, and my hands were still trembling. How could they harm me like this? How could they have caused me such pain? It wasn't over, though. No, not by any means. I was scarcely able to function for the following few days. I was a wreck on the inside, but I went through the motions, doing what I had to do. I would be struck with a recollection every time I felt like I could gather myself. A little time with Lana, a chuckle with Sean, and I would be starting over, attempting to understand everything. I had trouble falling asleep. I was unable to eat. The length of time this had been going on kept coming to mind. What was the duration of Sean and Lana's covert activities? How long had they been playing me like a fool and lying to my face? Then the phone rang. The one I ought to have anticipated. A few days after the altercation, Lana called me, seeming uncertain, as if she was at a loss for words. Even though she was crying, I was unable to feel sorry for her. "No more, Jerry," she cried. "Just listen to me, please. This is not what I intended to occur." I didn't want to hear it, but I also didn't interrupt her. She had no regrets. She wasn't. The only thing she regretted was getting caught. "Please, I'll make this right," she added. "I'll interrupt him. I promise to go to any lengths." The words hurt. After destroying everything we owned, she was requesting that I simply fix it? What caused her blindness? After everything she had done, how could she possibly expect me to ever trust her again? There was nothing left in me. Yet I could sense the despair in her voice. Nothing. "Lana, you made your decision," I stated icily. "You choose him. Additionally, you cannot pretend that there is anything left to save." A pause occurred. She was trying to stabilize herself, and I could hear her breathing. "I apologize, Jerry," she muttered. "I really am. It didn't matter, though. I had no intention of forgiving her. I refused to allow her another opportunity to destroy me. Divorce went quickly. I filed as soon as I could. It was about survival, not retaliation. I have to get over this. I had to stop wasting time on those who had deceived me. However, my parents' betrayal stunned me more than Lana's. I assumed they would support me. They were meant to be. They were meant to be angry and support me. However, I didn't receive the expected outrage when I explained what had transpired. I received sympathy. She must have felt so lonely. Jerry, my mother, who I assumed knew me better than anybody else, murmured, gazing at me with sorrowful eyes. "You've put in a lot of work." Perhaps all she needed was someone to talk to. Typically a quiet man, my father nodded his approval. "Son, marriage is difficult. Humans are fallible. Stunned, I gazed at them. What I was hearing was unbelievable. My voice broke as I added, Dad, she didn't just make a mistake. She shared a bed with Sean, my closest companion. Really? Do you not understand that? However, they failed to grasp it. They were unable to comprehend. They wouldn't. Then it dawned on me. I wasn't only battling Sean and Lana. I was at odds with my own relatives. They had picked them instead of me. And I was unable to overlook that. The weeks that followed the filing of the divorce papers flew by. Something inside of me had broken. Even though it felt like my entire world was falling apart, I was finished. In this scenario, I was no longer going to be the victim. My dad, Sean, and Lana were all involved in this. Now that they had taken sides, it was time for me to do the same. I refused to stand by and watch them get away with it. I had always been the reserved one, the one who remained out of the spotlight and ignored problems. However, that was no longer who I was. I had a burning inside of me that I couldn't put out because something had changed. It was more than simply Lana. Sean wasn't the only one involved. This was about taking back my life, my authority, and my honor. I was determined to reclaim everything that they had taken from me. I refrained from seeking retribution right away. I wasn't really that careless. No, this required some cunning on my part. I needed to make a plan. However, it became apparent to me that I had the ideal chance to hit them in the spot. I have always provided financial support to my folks. I had always given, but they had never asked. I ensured that their retirement funds were replenished and their bills were paid each month. They didn't need to be concerned. I ensured it. However, I couldn't bear the idea of assisting them any longer in light of everything that had transpired. I was done because they had picked Lana and Sean over me. Not anymore. All of the automatic transfers I had set up for them were canceled when I got online. Everything I did for them, no matter how small, is gone. I had no hesitation at all. It was freeing. Like they had made me do, they would have to find it out for themselves. I didn't answer my phone the next time I saw my mother's name. I kept it from ringing. I simply left it on voicemail. A few days later, I disregarded my dad's SMS message. Nothing else could be said. I was making my decision now that they had made theirs. However, they failed to grasp it. They were unable to comprehend. I also knew that they wouldn't. A week later, my mother called once more. I took the call even though I wasn't prepared. Nate? Her voice was tremulous as she spoke. I must speak with you. It has to do with your dad. It was unbelievable to me. The same old thing happened. Every time they needed something, they returned. What's the matter now? I asked in a flat voice, revealing the resentment that had grown within me. Her voice broke as she said, Your father is in the hospital. He is really ill, and we are at a loss on what to do. Nate, please, I need your assistance. I desired to experience an emotion. Yes, I did. I wanted to experience sympathy, sadness, or even just a glimmer of the son who once cared for his parents. However, I didn't. I had no feelings. When I most needed them, they had deserted me. They needed my assistance after siding with Lana and Sean. I apologize, Mom, I responded icily. You made a decision. They were your choice. To me, you're dead. You all. On the other end of the telephone, there was quiet. Her sobbing reverberated over the phone as I heard her gasping for air. I didn't care, though. I had already decided. I had no intention of turning back. That was the end of it. A peculiar calmness descended upon me as I hung up the phone. I felt in control once more for the first time in weeks. I was no longer a pawn in anyone's scheme. It wasn't me who had to make the sacrifice. Now it was me who made the decisions. Lana's and Sean's situation quickly became strained. I wasted no time at all. I started my strategy while they were still having a great time in their new existence. Furthermore, I refused to let them get away with it. I was aware that when we were younger, Sean had engaged in some dubious economic dealings. I knew exactly where to look, and it wasn't anything significant, but enough to leave a trail. I combed through old emails and files for several restless nights, gathering anything that might destroy him. Suspicious transactions, dishonest commercial practices, everything that would undermine the flawless image he had created for himself. I sent everything to his employer after I had all I needed, anonymously. I refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing that I was the one who defeated him. However, I was aware that it would hit him hard. It was not long before the ramifications started. Sean lost his job in less than a week. His career, which he had so proudly constructed, was over. I was aware that it would be disastrous for him. He would never anticipate it. Even though I detested him, there was a certain charm in seeing him tumble from the high place he had placed himself in. Lana was also not exempt. I was able to access some of our previous accounts, which she had neglected to update before she departed. She didn't bother to cancel small items, nothing illegal. I therefore took care to keep her out of everything. She will no longer be able to enjoy meal deliveries on my Dime, Netflix, or Spotify. Even though it wasn't much, it felt amazing. When I had a lawyer friend write a letter requesting that Lana return the precious belongings she had taken. When she moved out, it was the last straw. Items that truly held significance for me, such as photographs, a watch my father had given me, and items I never imagined she would remove. However, she had. And she was forced to oblige when I asked for them back. The material wasn't the point. The principle was at issue. Their idyllic little life was collapsing by the time I finished. Sean was no longer able to obtain stable employment. It damaged his reputation. All Lana had left was a man who was unable to support her in the same manner that I had. Together, they had created a fantastic tale. It was falling apart, fragment by fragment. What's the best part? My parents also began to feel the pressure. Their cozy lives began to unravel without my financial assistance. The house they had worked so hard to maintain and their mounting bills, it had to be sold. Their financial situation quickly deteriorated, and they were forced to move into an assisted living facility funded by the government. They made an attempt to contact me. However, I choose to disregard them. They made an effort, but they ran out of things to say. They were now dealing with the fallout from their decision to choose Sean and Lana. People who claimed to love me took away everything I had worked for, including my marriage and family, and I expected to experience a sense of victory and happiness. I believed that after I forced them to pay, I would feel better. But as I saw them fall apart and the dust settled, something began to shift within me. I didn't feel at peace. It was void. I had taken every possible action to exact revenge on Sean and Lana. I had deprived them of their stability and comforts. They suffered because I had destroyed their small universe. Nevertheless, the fulfillment I had envisioned, it never materialized. After everything happened, I thought maybe I needed some time to process it all, so I stayed in the city for a bit. I kept myself occupied by working and being solitary. However, the seclusion didn't help. I only became aware of how little I had left and how much I had lost. The rage that had been burning so intensely inside of me began to subside, and this eerie silence took its place. My phone buzzed one evening. An old friend had left a message. I hadn't seen that name in years. It was Mark, a college acquaintance of mine. Although we had occasionally communicated, we had never been close. He was one of those individuals who always had a cheerful attitude, had his life together, and somehow managed to keep on top of things. His message was straightforward, but it had a greater impact on me than anything I had received in months. Hi, Nate. I wanted to let you know that even though we haven't spoken, you have been on my mind. How are you doing? I kept my fingers lingering over the keys while I gazed at the message. How did I fare? What else could be said? But for some reason, I felt compelled to reply. Perhaps it was the need for someone to genuinely care and the loneliness. I typed back, "Not very good, dude. Been difficult for a few months." Suddenly, a conversation began, and I found myself opening up for the first time in a long time. Mark paid attention. No queries about why things happened, no judgment. Just a basic comprehension. He inquired whether I would be interested in paying him a visit. After graduating, he had relocated to a different place and, based on his statements, established a life there. A new beginning. He wasn't attempting to correct me or give me advice. He merely gave me a way out. An opportunity to move on from the memories, if only temporarily. I considered it for a while. Really, what was keeping me here? Nothing. It had begun to feel like a cage, the city that had been my home, the place where I had lost and loved. Perhaps it was time to get out. A few days later, I packed my things and headed out. It seemed right, but it wasn't simple. I felt like I was taking care of myself for the first time in months. I was making the decision to let go of the past rather than fleeing my issues. Mark's apartment was cozy despite its modest size. When I finally made it to his cozy apartment in a peaceful area, I felt as if I could finally breathe. We spoke, reminisced, and drank beer as we used to for the following few days. Just two old buddies meeting up, no serious discussions, no in depth exploration of my past. But during those brief minutes, I began to understand something. Perhaps I wasn't entirely broken. Perhaps I was yet capable of rebuilding. Being away from everything and having time to reflect without the burden of my past weighing me down made a difference, even though it wasn't a quick remedy. I was beginning to feel more like the person I had been before everything went wrong. I even began to imagine what my future may hold, in terms of who I wanted to be going forward, not in terms of getting even or exacting revenge. I want to construct anything once more. I was open to it even though I wasn't sure what yet. A few weeks later, I went out with Mark to see some of his buddies. He advised me that meeting new people would help me decompress. I trusted him, even though I wasn't sure I was prepared for it. And I knew that things were about to change when I met her. Emily, who went by her name, was everything I hadn't anticipated. She didn't strive to impress anyone or be loud. I felt at ease with her since she was relaxed, laid back, and naturally warm. I didn't feel the burden of the past for the first time in months as we struck up a conversation. There was no deception, no manipulation, and no treachery. It felt fantastic to have a simple talk with someone. I took my time doing anything. Emily helped me realize that I didn't have to live with the consequences of my history indefinitely. Even if we took our time, I could go on. I could feel joy once more. And I began to believe that for the first time in a long time. After several months, I made the decision that something needed to change. Once more, I relocated on my own terms. I started over after leaving the city I knew, and the memories of Sean and Lana behind. I had stopped running away. I was starting over. I was able to put my skills to work at my new employment without being bound by my previous one. It was a new beginning. Even though Emily and I were still getting to know one another, there was a genuineness about her. No pretenses, no games. It was enough that she was herself. We laughed, chatted about life, and went hiking. I was able to genuinely grin for the first time. As time went on, I became increasingly aware that seeking retribution had not resolved any issues. I hadn't found closure or serenity in it, but moving on has. The true freedom lay in figuring out how to live for myself and create a future free from the constraints of the past. Now I'm doing better. Much better. I have no idea what the future holds for me, but I do know that I am stronger than I was. Although it no longer governs me, the past will always be a part of me. I am no longer that man, obsessed by anger and resentment. I'm the person that decided to go on and start over. What about Sean and Lana? They haven't gotten back to me, nor do I intend to. I've come to realize that I simply need to reconcile with myself, and I'm at peace for the first time in a long time.